together as a family, and bound as one, lifting up our voices together. Here we are, gathered together as a family. We're gathered together and bound as one, lifting up our voices together. We sing of love, we sing of life, we sing of hope, we sing of faith, we sing of life. We sing of love, we sing of life, we sing of hope, we sing of faith, we sing of life. Oh, here we are, gathered together as a family, and bound as one, lifting up our voices together. Oh, here we are, gathered together as a family, and bound as one, lifting up our voices together. We sing of love, we sing of life, we sing of hope, we sing of faith, we sing of life. We sing of love, we sing of life, we sing of hope, we sing of faith, we sing of life. Here we are, gathered together as a family. Thanks.
Welcome to the family of Woodland Chapel Center for Spiritual Living. Thank you. What a beautiful introductory song to have. Does everybody feel pretty good this morning? Hurrah! Yes, I know we do. This is a wonderful place to be. My name is Moore Horton, Reverend Moore Horton. I'm the senior minister here, and I've just returned from just about 4 weeks of vacation. So I'm rip-roaring and ready to roll. And as we have some new guests this morning, I think, do we have, if you have not received a visitor's packet, would you raise your hand, please? And yeah, okay. Our practitioner, Ruth, will bring a package to you. And it just has some information about us, our congregation, and what we do. Yeah. Okay. And then I think there's a young fellow over here, Dylan, right? Ruth? Miss Ruth? Dylan. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. One advantage of meeting people before the meeting starts. Okay. A technical issue is very, very helpful to us. If you take your magic gizmo that connects you to the whole world and put it on airplane mode for the duration of this, we have a limited Wi-Fi system, and our broadcast goes out through Wi-Fi. So if you turn to settings, in my case, yeah, make that little button green. Why? That'll help a lot. You know, during this week, we will be having a book study group. I believe it's starting on the 14th, if I remember correctly. And the book, as you can see in the last part of your program, is What's in the Way is the Way by Mary O'Malley. And it's a really good continuation from the last book we used, which was The Untethered Soul. I think you might enjoy that. And we have it starting at 1:30 in the library. So if you'd like to come for the afternoon, you're certainly welcome to be here. Then good news. We have volunteers who have signed up to help with our hospitality. And the sign-up sheet is still in the library. So if you'd like to help, add your name. But we will have hospitality next week for Easter. So I'm just really happy about that. I think fellowship is really a good part of what we experience here. And I'm just thrilled with that. All right. Well, next week we have a distinguished speaker. Yes, myself, Reverend Morton. And we'll be talking about Easter. We kind of give an Easter theme, one of the basic celebrations in the calendar for everyone. That's reveal, release, and rise. So we're going to talk about being a risen consciousness next week. Are there any other announcements that you know of that need to be made at this time? All right. So I think we did all of that. Let's do our congregational song.
Yeah.
All right.
If you feel comfortable, go ahead and stand
You
up.
want to stand up? And the words are in your insert to your program.
I'm gonna move to the light. I'm gonna speak of the light. I'm gonna sing with the light. I'm gonna dance in the light. When I choose to remember that Spirit is all, I rejoice and give praise and shine in the light. Yeah, let's sing it again. I'm gonna move to the light. I'm gonna speak of the light. I'm gonna sing with the light. I'm gonna dance in the light. When I choose to remember that Spirit is all, I rejoice and give praise and shine in the light. Okay, so let's emphasize that to the light, of the light, we're the light, and in the light. Okay? Here we go. 1, 2. I'm gonna move to the light. I'm gonna speak of the light. I'm gonna sing with the light. I'm gonna dance in the light. When I choose to remember that Spirit is all, I rejoice and give praise and shine in the light. Good job. One more time. I'm gonna move to the light. I'm gonna speak of the light. I'm gonna sing with the light. I'm gonna dance in the light. When I choose to remember that Spirit is all, I rejoice and give praise and shine in the light. When I choose to remember that Spirit is all, I rejoice and give praise and I shine in the light. Yeah, shine in the light. Ooh, shine in the light. Shine. Good job.
Thank you so much for bringing us to the light this morning. We have a light experience coming up of moving into the light spiritually with our head practitioner, Kathy Prather.
Let's just take a moment to breathe deeply, to center ourselves here in this beautiful chapel, knowing that we are right where we should be. We are right where we belong, doing what we need to do. We are each led in our unfolding. And I know this for each one of us. We are all beloveds. And we are each valuable, each held in love. And as we take a few minutes out of our day to know this, and to know it together, there's such strength in being in community. Rising each other up. And that love that we feel flows through the universe, flows through us. And we are the love. And so this morning, I know that that love, which powers the universe, which creates the universe, is here right now. It is who we are, it is what we are, it is what we are about. And I know that each one of us is here expressing that. And I know our service today is filled with joy, light, and love. And I am so grateful that this is so, and that you are each here today, aligning yourselves with that great spirit. And so it is. Would you read with me, please, the affirmation in your program? No matter what happens in my life, I am whole and complete, and so it is.
We enjoy having a member of our congregation come up and read for us. And I believe today it's Carol Hoddle. Carol, do I see you right handy here? There you are. Please come forward. Carol is a very experienced reader. She's a poet and an author in her own right. Please come forward.
Today's reading is The Power of Compassion. Michael Beckwith says, to the degree that you attune yourself to the vibratory frequencies of love, compassion, truth, discernment, and honesty, a vibration will go forth from you that contributes to the upliftment of your own consciousness and the collective consciousness. Ernest Holmes says, compassion and caring are the ties that bind us together in mutual understanding and in a unified attempt to uncover the divinity in each other. The reading says, an episode of the new Lost in Space series treated me to a profound spiritual lesson. As the Earth grew uninhabitable, colonists set out to settle a new planet, Alpha Centauri. They built their spaceship around a captured alien engine, and the robot aliens are out to retrieve their engine and destroy the colonists. After too many mishaps to count, the Robinson family finally makes it to Alpha Centauri with the robots in pursuit. The colonists work feverishly to deploy their defense system, but some of the robot ships manage to slip through at the last second, crash landing on the planet. As she flees the crash, Penny Robinson passes a robot trapped by debris. She pauses and then turns back, despite the urging of her siblings. You're dying, aren't you? She asks the robot. She then frees the robot from the debris. It stands up, towering before her, weaponized limbs at the ready. However, after a moment, the weapons retract, and the light in his face turns from evil robot red to white, like that of the friendly robot that has been helping the family on their journey. The rescued robot communicates to the others that these humans are not the enemy. This simple act of compassion for the enemy causes the robots to overcome their programming, turning the tide of the battle in the colonists' favor. Yes, this was fiction, but it reminds me that compassion is a powerful tool. The next time you encounter a person you find difficult, give compassion a try. Our affirmation is, I view all others through the eyes of compassion, helping to unleash the best in my fellow beings of spirit.
Today's message, which is the journey of betrayal, led me to thinking about forgiveness. And the two songs for this morning, one comes from a 90s alt band and the other from Disney. So we found forgiveness on a pretty broad spectrum there. So this is Forgiveness by Ed Roland. Silence I would love to forget, but restitution hasn't come quite yet. And with one accord I keep pushing forth. I stretch my heart to heal some more. It used to be all I'd want to learn was wisdom, trust, and truth. Now all I really want to learn is forgiveness for you. As my seasons change, I've now grown to know when one's heart creates one soul doesn't owe. So I wash away the stains of yesterday, then tempt my heart with love's display. It used to be all I'd want to learn was wisdom, trust, and truth. Now all I really want to learn is forgiveness for you. It used to be all I want to learn was wisdom, trust, and truth. Now all I really want to learn is forgiveness for you. Thanks.
I know almost everyone here knows Reverend Julie Applegate very well, but there are 2 or 3 people who are new, so I'd like to just give a brief introduction. Reverend Julie has founded at least one new center, if not 2, and has been in Science of Mind for a longer time.
A long time.
A longer time. Longer than 3 days, anyway, for certain. That's for certain. And she is one of our most treasured speakers here at Woodland Chapel on our staff. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Julie Applegate.
Thank you, and good morning. morning, and so good to see you here today. You know, it's so, for me, I like to gather in community. I like to see you. I like to feel your presence. When I read in an article in the New York Times last week that talking to ministers, rabbis, imams from all different traditions, you know, as the last couple of years, all the centers, the temples and whatnot were closed. But the interesting, and it was a difficult way for those spiritual leaders to serve the people. And so, you know, we've evolved into new ways of doing things. And the article was talking about how more people have been engaged in their religious tradition, whatever that is, and spirituality. And they have done that through, of course, the internet that made so much available from so many places for everybody. And yeah, it's talked about, you know, young people, everyone looking for meaning, looking for purpose, and why are we here? So that doesn't change just because there's, you think young people aren't interested in that. Everybody is interested in that. It's perennial questions that we ask. And so, but, you know, but what I am really glad that we can meet in person. I listen to plenty on the internet, but there's something about actually being here in person with each other that is so important. And for those who haven't experienced that, you know, it's really a treasure. It's like, you know, get to touch and see each other. So when I spoke 2 weeks ago, I said we're going to do a walk through the journey of Easter. And you're probably like, Easter? Well, you know, like, we don't celebrate the traditional Easter. What are you going to talk about? But it's such a joyful holiday, and I love Easter. I love the colors. I love the Easter baskets. It's just a beautiful time of the year. And in our culture, it is pervasive, the Easter story. And most of us grew up with the Easter story. And in New Thought, we don't look at it the same way as perhaps you did growing up or in a traditional way. And so how does it speak to us? Because most New Thought churches do celebrate Easter in our own way. And it took me a while to come to, because I was raised, you know, with the traditional story. And it took me a while to come to evolve to a meaning, a deeper understanding in a new way about Easter. And I really want to share that with you because I think it's important. I think it's important. And Gene Houston said this. He says, we seek consciously or unconsciously for those people and ideas whose stories illumine and run parallel to and fill in the gaps of our own story. Human connections are deeply nurtured by story. And we're healed by stories. They're important. They help us understand this journey of life that we're on. You know, when I was a little girl, how many of you had little golden books when you were little? Yeah, and so my grandmother would read these golden books to me, and she read to me a lot. One of my cousins in recent years said, well, that was because she was the only way she could quiet you down. I thought that was really snide. But she did read to me all the time out of these. Sorry about that. That wasn't nice. She was my best friend. But anyway, so she would read out of these golden books. And there were two stories particularly that really meant a lot to me as a tiny child. And one was Hansel and Gretel. And you like that one too. And what it did for me was, I didn't have the word for it, of course, but it's a sense of empowerment. And these children, I missed the whole thing about the betrayal and you know, the stepmother got all the bad rap, didn't she? It was really the father who betrayed them. Anyway, we'll go into the Hansel and Gretel. Yeah, I really went there. So these children overcame this wicked witch. outsmarted her. And I just felt so empowered as a child through that identification. And the other story that really stuck with me was Bambi. And because I couldn't cry about my own mother's death, somehow that embarrassed me. I don't know why, but I could cry about Bambi's mother. And so it was like a projection onto that. They were powerful stories in my life as a little kid. And I didn't come to understand the nature of story for a long time. But that's what this Easter time is, I think. And bear with me while we go on this journey today in the second part. See, all great stories draw from this archetypal world, this world of patterns. Plato called it a world of form, underneath, out of which all things kind of take their form. And they're common to all people in all cultures. If you read about Joseph Campbell or anything, the stories, the myths, they're pervasive throughout the world and cultures because they're so meaningful to us. And so I think the Easter story, for me, is one of these stories. And I honor however you take that story because it will have meaning for you. But I want to share this as our New Thought community. This Easter story. And the problem arises, I think, with this story when we take it literally. It loses its soul quality, the ability to illumine our own story. And the Christian Gospels are not biography and they're not history. They're faith stories. Faith stories. And 2 weeks ago, we looked at Palm Sunday. Well, actually, today is Palm Sunday, but I had to do it 2 weeks ago. So we looked at Palm Sunday, and Palm Sunday is the celebration of Jesus going into Jerusalem at the Passover celebration, and he's supposed to riding on this donkey and people putting palms down in front of him. So historically, something did happen, so Jesus goes into Jerusalem, and he's got all these followers, and he caused some kind of upset. And the Romans during Passover, it was just mass chaos, all these people coming from all over to celebrate Passover, and the Romans didn't like disturbing, and Pilate particularly wanted to look really good. So they didn't like these things happening. And I want to say that, the scriptures say Jesus went up and tipped over tables and all the money changers, whoops. And probably that didn't happen because there was nothing wrong with the money changing in the temple. People were buying things to sacrifice on Passover. So, but he caused some kind of trouble, and the Roman authorities were not happy. And they were looking for all of these people that might be causing disturbances. Because remember, these were people who were enslaved in a way to the Roman powers. And there was always some kind of rebellion going on. So he's arrested. He's arrested. But they're probably looking for him. And his friends betray him. His best friend betrays him, we are told. His followers. And when he's arrested, it's because they're probably hanging out as a group, and when he's arrested, they just all scamper. None of them stayed with him. And this is really an important part of the story. This betrayal. And I'm going to digress a little bit here. In the Gospels, it says that the Jewish priests, the Jewish leaders, turned Jesus over to Pilate and said, "You need to crucify him." They were really ticked at him. There is no scholar of any note that believes that happened. Because remember in the story, Pilate says, "Yeah, he's such a good guy. Are you sure you want to do this? He's king of the Jews. Couldn't you maybe think of somebody else?" No, got to do him. So, see, the reason I'm digressing on that is I think it's kind of important. Because at that point in the scriptures, throughout the centuries that followed, and even today there are places where they say the Jews were Christ killers. And as a result of that, the Jewish people down through the ages were persecuted and killed as Christ killers. You see the power of story? The absolute power of story. That probably didn't happen that way because there's no way Pilate would have said that. He was noted for his brutality, and there's plenty of historians that affirm that. He was noted for brutality, so that probably never happened. But when the story takes form, it has effect. Our stories are important. I just wanted to say that because I didn't want that to pass because, so many horrible things have happened because of that piece of the story. And so this idea of betrayal, and what one of us has not been betrayed by maybe our family, maybe nature. When is so painful is during these fires and all these things when people build these lives in their hopes and then they're destroyed, and it's like nature has betrayed them. They can feel betrayed. A friend, a colleague at work that you trusted. We betray ourselves, don't we? Many times we betray ourselves. We're worried about what people think, so we're not honest about ourselves. We compromise, and we feel bad about it. We betray other people. So many of us sitting here today may be feeling uncomfortable and pained about a betrayal in your life. And so Jesus is betrayed. And he's betrayed most of all by his Father. This God presence that he called Abba, Daddy. Closer than anything. You see, it's always the person we're closest to that betrays us the most, that we care the most about, that it hurts the worst. And it is said that he said when he was crucified, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now, no one knows what he said or didn't say as he was crucified because thousands of people were being crucified, and there isn't probably anyone that was there to listen. But it's appropriate in this story. My God, why have you forsaken me? The person, the God, the presence. And so his trust is broken. His trust is broken because it is the one who he most trusted. So Jesus is crucified and buried, and on the third day he rose again. He's reborn in spirit. So writing decades after his death, each one of the Gospels, if you read them, I don't know how many of you guys read them or not, but each Gospel tells a different story. And that doesn't matter. We always want everything to be just footnoted and absolutely accurate to the way that we think accurate. That's not the important thing for the people who wrote these. They were faith stories, and they had to find meaning. Like, here is this man who was so important, and yet he's crucified and he's died, and how could this happen? How could this happen to this leader that we have? We've got to find meaning to it. Got to find meaning to it. So the stories grew. Because they're bound to say, if he's so special with this relationship with God, why didn't God save him? Makes sense, doesn't it? Have to figure out why. So these are ways of understanding, but go deeper. See, Jesus is transformed in this story. You know, I am just not going to manage here. Okay. And we too must die to our old story. Our beliefs, our trust, our limitations, to become who we are and who we're meant to be, these deeper possibilities. It's part of the journey, you guys. We have to die to our story. Nature even My husband said, "Are you going to wear the one over your head?" I said, "Oh no, it'll mess my hair." The fruits of vanity. Oh gosh. So, you know, nature does that too, like the seeds, and I like to garden. I love to garden. And you plant these lovely little seeds. And in order for them to flower, I mean, these tiny little seeds can create these most magnificent plants, but they first have to break open. They first have to break open. Nature does that. So Jean Houston puts it this way: betrayal of all the woundedness that may be suffered by the soul can be the greatest agent of the sacred. It marks the end of the primal unconscious trust and forces upon us those terrible conditions that accompany the taking of the next step. And we have many choices what we can do with betrayal. Ultimately, she says, the refusal to accept the opening offered by betrayal leads us to self-betrayal. Transformation occurs in the discovery of the larger story, that it causes us to become more than we were, different than we were. And I've been reading biography of Eleanor Roosevelt, and she was born, you know, in this privileged society, one of the American aristocrats at the time, comfortable, but there were a lot of rules about behavior, especially for women, lots of rules, and even more rules in her society, how women behaved, what you did, what you didn't do, you know, and she also she grew up, her mother died when she was young, her father was an alcoholic and died as an alcoholic, raised by her grandmother, and all of her mother and her aunts were supposed to be some of the most beautiful women. And I've actually seen pictures, and they really are quite attractive of their day. And she wasn't. And she was quiet. And so she grew up with this feeling, we call it low self-esteem. But a brilliant, brilliant child. And so to skip right through, there's 3 volumes, so I'm going to skip. So she marries Franklin Roosevelt. And for the first few years, it's really quite nice, and they have 5 children, and she stays home, and she lives mostly with his mother, who sets the rules and manages the money. And so it's a very circumscribed life. And deep down, she's not really happy, but she's devoted to her husband, devoted to her husband. And then Franklin Roosevelt has an affair with her secretary. And she is devastated, of course. And his mother insists that there will be no divorce or there'll be no money. So, and yeah, such power. But anyway, so she, in this devastation, she has to look at her life. It isn't the way it was. The rules that she had, how are they going to serve her? And it spent a long time, and amidst this grief and pain, for the first time in her life, in fact, she lived in the Roosevelt's mother's home, both in Hyde Park and in New York City. The houses belonged to his mother. She didn't even have her own home. But in this process, she began to have to find a new way. And she began to break out little by little meet new people, people that were passionate about what she was passionate about. Little by little to form her own life, to find out what was meaningful to her. And you know, she was a politician probably before as much as her husband was. And because of this, and she became a happy, joyful, a writer. She earned her own money by speaking. So she wasn't dependent. She was involved in every major cause, feminist cause, public health, you name it, that was social welfare. Eleanor Roosevelt became involved in. That would not have happened had she stayed the wife of a prosperous, upper-class man in her culture. Unhappy, but those were the rules. But this forced her into a new place, a place to find her friends, find what was real for her. And she became, in the 20th century up till I think about 1960 when she died, takes 3 volumes. Because what she did is just phenomenal. Things that we are still working on today, healthcare, 40-hour week, all of that, these things that we take for granted, these women, and she was a leader among them, were the ones that moved for these things to happen. And I remember my grandmother just adored this woman, as so many people did. She walked on water for so many people. And would she have become who she was without this betrayal? They stayed married, they supported each other politically, but they were never again a couple like they had been, and it worked. Was this an overnight journey? Of course not. Of course not. Could she have chosen to become bitter? Of course. Reasonable. You see, betrayal is a form of crucifixion. And the rebirth, like all birth, is not easy. And it has stages that we must walk through. And of course, if we don't do that, we'll repeat that again and again. And so, first we must be willing to acknowledge the pain. And remember, the story is Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days. We do go into that tomb process for as long as it takes. For this whole self to be taken apart and rebuilt and put back together differently. You know, it can't be rushed. And I would invite all of us who maybe are in a place of deep betrayal to find a professional, a guide for us. Because it is hard to do alone. To help us through this period of grief and anger and pain. Because, you know, guys, it's so easy to get stuck. None of us like pain. At least, I mean, I'm speaking for me. Is there anybody here who really likes pain? No, B, bring it on. We don't. We don't like pain. And so we do what we can to avoid it. And somewhere in this process, you know, we tell our story, and we should for a while, maybe. But then in order, we start feeling like, okay, I'm not feeling so bad. Maybe it's work. Maybe we take medication. Maybe we watch TV. Maybe food is what makes us feel better. So we're feeling better. And we think Or we rush into forgiveness. Now, guys, you know, in our tradition, and I think in most traditions, forgiveness is a pretty big deal, and we talk about it, and we're gonna forgive. But you can't rush into forgiveness. You rush into forgiveness, that can be just another drug to help ease the pain, but it may not be transformative. We can't shorten our time in the tomb. It takes as long as it takes. And so watch for those things that, oh, well, I'm feeling better. But is it just a way just not to feel the pain? Have I transformed? You know, the butterfly goes into the cocoon. See these stories? You go into the tomb, you go into the cocoon, and everything in that larva breaks down, that caterpillar breaks down. Literally breaks down and is reformed to become this butterfly. And that's our process. And you know, it takes a while, and there's stages that we go through, and we might repeat the stages. And I think what we need is patience, because in this process, you see, this is the value of Easter, because out of the tomb Jesus arose transformed. That's the story. All the Gospels tell it differently, but that's the story. That's the story. It's our story. It's not about a man who also became God, or who is God and man, and who died to save us for our sins. If we go to heaven, if we believe in him, you see, then he's doing all the work for us, isn't he? I mean, I get that. I can latch on to that. You know, somebody else does my work, I'm okay. Except that it doesn't work. So, but in this story is our story, our journey, even through that darkness, into the transformation, which was meant to happen all along. Because we live kind of in this world of perhaps the rules, the culture, the whatever, and when it betrays us, we have to become bigger than. We have to become bigger than. And it's a journey, and every one of us has been there. Every one of us has been on both sides of that. So I just invite us to look at this story as part of our story today. And see the meaning there. And what is it? Where are we in this? Have patience with ourselves too. Love ourselves. Because these human stories of transformation are not easy. Are not easy. But they take us, if we will go with it, if we will allow it to take us, we will be transformed. We will be transformed. And I look at Eleanor, I love this story, and I think it's coincidental, I'm into that story again. Seeing that, it's kind of a guide for me. 3 volumes, but they're fun. Go look it up. I can't remember her name. Cook. I think I remember those. So for each one of us, and there is a third part to the story that I will talk about when my next scheduled to be here and speak. But for now, my friends, just have a blessed Easter and a transformational Easter. Stay.
The song is called Forgiveness and Love. imagining you're far away, searching for the words to say. I feel it when you fall apart. Our lives are our greatest art. I don't want to change your mind, 'cause I accept you for everything you are and will be. Stay here with me now. The only thing that our hearts are made of are the acts of forgiveness and love. The only thing real when push comes to shove are the acts of forgiveness and love. 'Cause in the end, no one loses or wins. The story begins again and again with forgiveness and love. You don't ever have to read my mind. You can see it when you close your eyes. Don't believe it when you lose your faith. Another moment is a moment away. I can't tell you what the future holds or how to live. All I know is what feels right lights up my life again and again. The only thing that our hearts are made of are the acts of forgiveness and love. The only thing real when push comes to shove are the acts of forgiveness and love. 'Cause in the end, no one loses or wins. The story begins again and again with forgiveness and love. The only thing that our hearts are made of are the acts of forgiveness and love. The only thing real when push comes to shove are the acts of forgiveness and love. 'Cause in the end, no one loses or wins. The story begins again and again with forgiveness and love. Forgiveness, forgiveness and love. With forgiveness and love. Forgiveness, forgiveness and love. With forgiveness and love. Thanks.
Susan and Mark, we're so glad you're here. So glad you're here. And so, will the ushers come forward? Let's just wait for them. All right. Ladies. And so let's say together our affirmation, or offering affirmation. And these words are by no accident. They are so profoundly true. Divine love as me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I circulate. And so it is.
But everything in this world world goes around, flowing with abundance, it knows no bounds. Giving and receiving, we circulate the love with gratitude and knowing there's always enough. We give thanks, we give thanks, we give thanks with this offering. We give thanks, we give thanks, we give thanks for everything. We give thanks for everything. We give thanks for everything.
We do give thanks for everything. Through the power of our word, we just call a blessing on these gifts and the giver. Because we know that our word, as we speak our word into the law of mind, has power. And so we just bless it all. We give thanks. And with great joy, we go forward for a wonderful week. And so it is. And let us stand together as we affirm our prayer of protection and that there is peace on earth. And as we sing this song on peace on earth, wow, there's a lot of pain around where there is no peace. And so let us hold as we sing that these peoples throughout the globe that are really suffering because of the craziness that human beings can do to one another. But knowing that peace is possible if all our hearts join together for it, and prayer is powerful. So, our prayer protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, family all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now, where